Hey folks, Randy here, Dulin Cut Trim. So I'm gonna do a video today. It's a little different from what I normally do. Actually, I just tried to record it on the GoPro, and the file got corrupted 6 minutes in. So I'm actually gonna have to redo this. I want to talk to you today about running a business while being a special needs father. Um, this isn't really something I've talked about a lot recently on the channel. I don't think. Maybe I have. But I want to kind of get into it today. Somebody asked me a question and it really got me thinking about it, and so I just want to share. When I started this business, we were kind of already in the journey with my son. I don't want to get into all the details of it. And I want to preface in the beginning, when I'm talking about this, that I am not looking for anybody's sympathy. I'm not looking for you to feel bad for me. I'm just sharing information to be an encouragement to other people. So if somebody wants to get weird in the comments, or if it seems like I'm feeling bad for myself, trust me, I'm not. I don't need your sympathy. I don't really want it. If you want to do anything, you can pray for me. That'd be nice. But I just wanted to clarify that in the beginning. So my son, he has a genetic problem. I don't want to get into all the details of it, but basically he's the only person in the world that they've ever tested that has the genetic profile that he has, which means they don't really know much of anything. They can say, well, he's got some characteristics of this, he's got some characteristics of that, but other than that, we don't really know what's going on, which was really stressful in the beginning. And now, when we started, it was just kind of like you kept getting bad news after bad news after bad news. You know, he got diagnosed with epilepsy when he was very young. I think that started. I can't remember if it started when he was 2 or 3. When they started, when the seizures started, the doctors used to tell us, like, hey, as long as they're not going for more than 45 minutes to an hour, should be fine. Shouldn't really cause any issues with his, shouldn't cause any like long-term damage to his brain. Which was like great, because I mean he was developing, but slowly. I think at the most he had about 20 words, and he could do his ABCs. But then the seizures started going long. Once the seizures started going for more than an hour, then they just stopped talking about damage to the brain, and his all those words went away. I don't know if he still has them. He's the kind of guy that tends to focus on a skill and kind of ignore everything else while he's learning it, but all those words went away several years ago and they haven't come back. So there in the beginning, when he was dealing with those, I was still working for the state of Maryland, and it was rough. I mean, there was multiple times where my wife would call me and say, hey, I had to call the ambulance, we're headed to the hospital. That was my GoPro turning off. And can you meet me there? And so I would, obviously, because I'm a father. I mean, I don't know what else you would do in that situation. But I didn't really get the support that I would have thought I would have gotten working for the state of Maryland. I remember actually one time going in to ask, to say like, hey, I gotta go to the hospital. My son's, being taken there by ambulance. And I remember one time being asked, I was like, do you really need to go? Isn't your wife going? I mean, do you need to go? And, yes. Yeah. How is that even a question? I that question still boggles my mind to this day. So, well, eventually I ended up leaving there and starting my own business. But I want to get to some other things before I start talking about that. So, in the beginning, when you're a special needs parent, you start looking for resources and things. But because of my son's unique profile, there's nobody. There's people that have some of the traits, but not others. There's people that have these, but not those. And so, there's not a lot of people, period, dealing with what we're dealing with. And so we would have to we would join like these Facebook groups, but like some of these groups, less than 100 members total, because there's just not that many people dealing, and that's just one of the genetic issues. So it's like, yeah, these people have one, but they don't have the other ones. So it's really hard to get like a community of support. I mean, because there are a lot of special needs resources out there, but they're all geared towards the moms. If you're a father of a special needs kid, I gotta be honest, man, it really feels like nobody cares at all. It feels like people assume that because you're a man or a father or whatever, that you're not doing anything for your kid. And so it feels like they just don't feel like wasting the time on you. And so while I know it's tough for my wife, believe me, I know, because we're partners in this thing, it's a little different for me because nobody really cares that I'm dealing with it. There's not that same level of support for men. It's just not there. And so it can be a very, very lonely experience because not only are we dealing with special needs, which is isolating, we're dealing with a kid who has special needs that no one else has, which is even more isolating. And then I'm his father, which is even more isolating. We had a guy commented on the channel, and I think he wanted to keep things private, so I'm not going to put your stuff out there, dude. But he commented on the channel, and he was the first time I had ever spoken to our little interaction online. It was the first time I'd ever spoken to another special needs father that I even remotely related to. So it's a very isolating experience. Because you are working with a kid, and I promise this gets business related eventually. I'm just taking my time, but you have a special needs kid, and like with my son's special needs, no matter how old he gets, he hangs out, and depending on the domain, in about a 1 to 3 year old level. So, but he keeps getting bigger. I mean, I can tell you right now, I've changed more diapers than just about any person on this planet. Most parents that you'll ever meet, man or woman, I've probably changed double the diapers they ever will, and I'm still going. So it's just a different experience. And so, part of that, with having the seizures, my son was going to the hospital a lot, and dealing with that. And I needed to be in a situation where I could best care for my family. A lot of men, I don't want to put this on other people, so this is just my perspective. But I feel like a lot of people are able to their focus in life is to make as much money as they can, and use that to provide for their family. Well, I mean, for me, that's not really how it works. For me, it's I need to take care of my family, and that doesn't necessarily. I mean, it does mean making money, but not at the expense of being there. We're really blessed. My wife is a stay-at-home mom, which means she works a full-time job because she takes care of our son during the day. Um, and so, well, a lot of lawn guys, what they like to do is, work, from sun up to sunset every day. That's not really a reasonable thing or a fair thing for me to do. I need to be able to work in such a way that I can be home to help her shoulder the load. She has the harder job, you know. She's the one that's taking care of him during the day. And so when I get home, I need to not be so exhausted that I can't be there to pick up the slack for her. Um, and so you have to approach things a little differently when that's the case. If I could stay out and work really late and all that stuff, but that would be irresponsible, because part of taking care of my family is not just about money; it's about time, and it's about a lot of time. Um, so I ended up starting my business, because ironically, it gave me more time to be home. I was working for the state of Maryland as a foster care worker, which meant at any given moment, my normal hours were 8 to 5. But at any given moment, I could have something come up that meant I was going to have to pull an all-nighter. Whether there was a foster kid that was attempting suicide and somebody had to take them to the hospital and be with them throughout the night. I did that several times. Or I dealt with a lot of gang-related cases, a lot of sex abuse cases, and you got some of these. I on more than one occasion I had teenage girls who had gotten into prostitution that I was working on extricating, and when they call you at 8 o'clock at night to come get to them, 3 hours away, me and one of my female coworkers hop in the car, drive down there, go get them, bring them back. It's just crazy, and dealing with like gangsters, and you know I got into fights, and it just wasn't worth the money. It wasn't worth the money to be like going nose to nose with a guy who's killed people, and for the $15 an hour or whatever I was making. It just wasn't worth it. Wasn't worth all the stress, and I couldn't handle the stress of that job and the stress of my son, so I had to pick one. And so I decided I was going to carry the stress. I know that's not the most Christian thing to do, but to carry the stress of dealing with my son's issues, instead of carrying the stress of working in the foster care system. It killed me to leave it, but it was the best thing for my family, because when I left, I actually had way more time on my hands. When I'm cutting grass, I can cut 15 lawns in a day and be home by 3. So I was actually, when I worked for social services, I wasn't getting home till 6 if things went according to plan. So I actually am home. I leave for work later, and I get home earlier now than when I worked for the state of Maryland, which allows me to be there for my family. So, it's one of those things where it's like almost counterintuitive, but running my own business actually makes it easier for me to care for my family in the way that I want to, which I'm blessed that that's the case. So but because I'm reviewing my notes. My notes were on the phone that I'm now recording on, so I'm having to mentally review them. So because of the situation my son's in, my business runs in a way that's different than I think you would typically have. A lot of guys, when you start running a business, you're supposed to start planning for your exit. And for me, it's a little different, because at no point is my life going to get easier. It's only going to get harder. I'm not looking at retiring and enjoying retirement with my wife. I'm going to be taking care of my son for the rest of my life. And so there's not really I look at things more in terms of like, where do I want to be 50 years from now, as opposed to where do I want to be 20 years from now. And I work towards that. And part of that is I'm extremely risk averse. Um, I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize anything um, with my family and being able to take care of them. So I am extremely slow to jump into anything, and I take the most minimal of risks. Um, Part of that is, I don't go into debt. I don't owe payments on anything. And all the equipment that I have, I pay cash for. And it's because I want to stay as nimble as possible. I want to be able to pivot whenever necessary. I want to be able to stop and do things differently if I need to. I want to be able to completely quit the lawn business if I need to. Um, because I just, with my son, I just never know. Um, there was a point we weren't really talking about it seriously. But at one point, my wife and I were talking about completely moving to a different state because of some treatments that are available. That's going to be news to some of my family. If it had become serious, you guys would have found out about it. But because of treatments that are available in some states as opposed to others, and some treatments are just straight up illegal in some states, we had considered moving to a state where we would have more options available to us to care for our son. Now, fortunately, God intervened. We didn't have to do that. But I always have that option open to me. Right now, I could shut Dulin Cut Trim's doors right now, and it would not cost me a dime. I could, I don't know why I would need to do this, but I could stop doing this so I could go do something else in another state or here or whatever. I don't know what that situation would be. My point is, I can pivot infinitely in any direction. I can turn my business into a barbershop. I don't know if I get calls for barbershops. I could turn it into a barbershop, and I wouldn't be paying on equipment that's not getting used because everything's paid for. So I value that ability to pivot and to be able to do whatever I want whenever I want. So, because I guess because, and I'm trying not to ramble, so I apologize if it seems like I am, but I'm very risk averse because I deal with enough risk with my son. So I prefer to put all the risk taking or whatever, or the stress from risk. I prefer to let that be with him over there, as opposed in the business. Dulin Cut Trim is a very easy to run business, and it works great. So it just, that's how I work it. Now, one of the things that this guy that kind of spurred this whole video, something that he brought up, and I wanted to touch on, is, I decided to be an involved parent. A lot of people are comfortable with one spouse. One spouse makes the money, the other spouse, well, honestly, in this day and age, one spouse makes the money, the other spouse makes the money and takes care of the kid. Yeah. That's never been me. My father was not that guy. My father, the example I got growing up was my father never missed a single sports game that I ever played. That's not true. He missed a couple, but when I say there was one year I played for 3 different basketball teams, and he never missed a game or practice. He made sure I knew I was important, and so I follow that same example. Especially in the beginning, I was at every single one of his doctor's appointments. I'm at every single IEP that my son has. That's education for a school. It's every 6 months you have the meeting. I'm there for my son all the time. And that means when he goes to the hospital, I go there too. It's not because it's a traumatic experience when he goes to the hospital. I mean, He's had to be intubated several times in the hospital. Which that's a whole set of drama and trauma all on its own. I mean, he's had a collapsed lung twice in the hospital because of the intubation, and it's just the whole thing. Um, he's been on helicopter rides when he's gone to the hospital. Sometimes like we've gone to the hospital and he's had to be transferred by helicopter. Sometimes my wife's rode with him. Sometimes I have, and I mean, I think his longest hospital stay, I want to say, was, honestly, it's all a blur. So for some reason I feel like 5 days is in my head. Um, but that might not be right. But I think the longest stay was 5 days, but multiple 2 and 3 day stays. Um, and I've had the wonderful experience of getting to the hospital and them not letting me in his room. We had one time, it was just a complete nightmare. And again, I apologize. The guys that have been through this, they understand. But I apologize if this is getting a little off topic. But I remember we had one time where I'm not sure what the deal was with this, but neither my wife or I were able to ride with him in the helicopter. Um, and so as soon as we realized that, like it was like a 45-minute drive to the hospital they were taking him to, but like a 20-minute flight. Um, so I hopped in the car and I started driving to the hospital that he was being transferred to, and my wife was just going to come later once he was on the helicopter because we needed to be with him. That's the thing. One of us has always been with him for every step of this journey. He has never, ever been alone in the hospital until that very moment. And so he had to take that hospital ride with just him and the emergency staff. And so I rushed to the hospital that he was going to and got there. He got there like shortly before I did. I get up to the unit that he's on, and they wouldn't let me in. And it was one of those things where it was like, I wonder if they would have treated my wife differently. Because I got in an argument with the person. They ended up threatening to call security on me unless I left. But it was one of those like traumatic moments where it's like, your son's got oxygen. He's got a breathing tube down his throat. He's knocked out after having a couple hour seizure. He's had to fly on a helicopter by himself. Granted, he was probably knocked out. But he's having to fly in the helicopter with all these strangers, and now I'm back, and you're not letting me in. Like, what's the matter with you? And eventually I got back in there, and just, whole thing. But anyway, I'm always there. And so if my wife calls me when I'm out mowing, um, and she says he's going to the hospital, well, guess what? I'm going there too. Now, COVID has kind of made that a little different. Sometimes they don't let both parents back there. But, during the pandemic, we've had to go to the hospital twice. And, it's stressful, man. Part of his issue is respiratory issues. That's not great, when you're dealing with COVID-19, Thankfully, nobody in our family has contracted that virus. Um, but, so, so anyway, so I always go. Even during the lawn season, I always go. And just, you just do your best to work around it. It's not easy doing that. And so I prefer to be honest with my customers. But I also like to use it as an opportunity to weed out the people that are not ideal for me. So when my son, I communicate via email with my customers. So if my son goes to the hospital, it's not always an all day thing. Most of the time it is, but not always. And so a lot of times what I'll do is once we get to the hospital, I'll use my phone and I can email all the customers that were on the schedule for that day. And I'll say, hey, my son got rushed to the hospital. It seems very unlikely that I'm going to make it to your property today. If I don't, I will send you an email tonight with a makeup date. And most of the time, just means the rest of my week is going to be horrible. When you're mowing 15, 20 yards a day, if you have to skip a day, it ain't great, because then you got to make all those up. But and most of the time, my customers are fine. I have customers who they're caring and compassionate people, and they'll just email back, say, "I'm praying for your son. I'm sorry to hear that," and some of them will even follow up, even after I've rescheduled, and they'll say, "Hey, I just wanted to see how your son's doing," and that's very kind. It means a lot to me when people do that. Some people are not understanding. Some people will accuse you of lying and saying that your son was not in the hospital. You just didn't feel like coming that day, and you could curse them out when they do that, or you could drop them, because obviously they're not your ideal customer, or you could do both. I mean, I'm not going to tell you which one I did. But when a customer reveals who they are, I present myself as a family-friendly business. It actually is in my on my website. It literally says our values are God, family, nature, in that order. And so my customers actually get to see a demonstration of that, because when family needs help, it takes precedent over your lawn. And you knew that from the beginning because you saw that on my website and in every email I've ever sent you. So it ends up not being as big an issue as long as I communicate. If my customers know what's going on, 9 times out of 10, it's completely fine. They understand. They know. Most of them, it's like whatever. You're just cutting grass. You're just keeping the county off my back, so it's fine. And the ones that aren't like that, they can. I'll either send them on their way, or they'll just find somebody else who doesn't have a special needs kid, and that's fine. If I'm not meeting your needs the way you want them met, then you should find somebody else, regardless of the reasons. I don't take offense to that, unless you accuse me of lying about it. Then it does bother me. But that's how I handle that. The last thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, and who knows, this could end up being a multi-part stuff because I'm sure a multi-part video because I'm sure I forgot stuff that I had written on my notes because I can't look at them. But the last thing is my relationship with God through this, and that's a tricky one because nobody wants to deal with this. When I'm just trying to unpack my feelings because honestly, I keep them buried. I've joked around. Well, since I'm not an alcoholic, I just got to bury my feelings because that's the only other way I know how to deal with it. So I'm actually unpacking them a little bit. So we could get emotional. Hopefully, we won't. But when you have a kid, when your wife's pregnant, what everybody's always saying is like, I don't care if it's a boy or girl. I just hope that it's healthy. And that's true. You do hope it's healthy. That's kind of all you want. I didn't care if he was a boy or a girl. I didn't care. But then he wasn't healthy. And so then you're immediately in this weird spot where you're the thing you've been saying that you thought was safe to say all along is that just as long as they're healthy, you're fine. Well, then they're not, and it's like, I've spent this whole time saying that this is all I wanted, and I'm not getting that. And then on top of that, you have the added stress of my son is the type of kid that they recommend you abort because of quality of life. And honestly, it's a little rage-inducing when I think about that, because I think he has an amazing life. He's a very happy person. He feels deeply. So like but his baseline is deeply happy. Now, if you take his favorite toy or it's time for bed before he's ready, deep sadness, deep heartfelt tears. I mean, so he feels deeply. And so just the thought that they would say that we should move on it's just a little wild. But when this stuff starts going on with your kid, it's really normal and reasonable, to look up at the sky and just be like, why? Why am I having to deal with this? Because just because a lot of people deal with it doesn't mean it's not hard. Um, you know, People die every day. It still sucks for everyone. And it's the same way with this. Um, and so it's really easy to, during your prayer time, to ask God why. Like, what the heck? What's your problem? That's usually how I phrase it. And I never get an answer that satisfies me. And I think it's because I don't think I'm mature enough to understand why. There's a really annoying uh, analogy that we Christians like to use, that you wouldn't try and teach a kindergartner calculus. They just wouldn't understand. No matter how you explained it to them, a kindergartner is not going to pick up on calculus. Honestly, 33-year-olds won't pick it up either. So instead, you don't try and explain calculus to them. You just say, this is what it is. Because if you try and explain it to them, they're not going to understand. And we Christians like to use that as the example for whenever God does something you don't understand, to explain it away, I guess. I hate that. It doesn't help me. It doesn't make me feel any better. Just saying that I don't understand, or I can't understand, is not satisfying. It's honestly, it's enraging. Yeah. And so, if you struggle with feeling really angry towards God because of the things that you deal with, which I haven't gotten into. I don't know if it seems like I've gotten into how tough being a special needs parent is. I don't know if you thought I was covering that. I wasn't. I have not shared at all. I've shared with you the easy parts. Going to the hospital, dealing with that. Those are the easy parts. I haven't told you about the hard parts. I'm not gonna. So it's really easy to be mad, and I do get mad. I'm not happy about what we have to deal with my son every day. I love him. I love hanging out with him. He is like, personality wise, he is basically me. Very relaxed, laughs a lot, makes himself laugh. He is very much me. But it's like, it's sad knowing that. I guess it's hard knowing that I serve an all-powerful God that could just solve it like that, and doesn't. That's a tough pill to swallow, and it's really hard not knowing why, because I'd really like to know, but I don't think I'm gonna know. I think so. I think dwelling on it is just an impossible thing. So, there's no point in faking it, Obviously, I'm talking to believers at this point. There's no point in faking it, acting like I know what's going on and I'm good, and that I'm better than I am, and I'm just trusting God. I'm not that good. So what I do instead is I just get real honest. And when I pray, I tell God exactly what's on my mind. I tell him when I'm pissed off. I tell him why I'm pissed off. And I also make sure it's clear it really does frustrate me a lot that you could solve this and aren't. Um, but and so then what I also do, because I can't carry anger. I don't want to live angry. I don't understand people that want to hang on to anger. I don't want to hang on to it. And so what I do is what the Bible says. The Bible says, cast your cares upon him. There's there's this funny thing that people say where it's like, God won't put more on you than you can bear. That is not true. That is not true at all. God will put way more on you than you can bear so that you will learn to cast those burdens onto him and you learn to trust him. I think one of the benefits of having to deal with a horrible situation every single day is I'm probably way better at trusting God for stuff than most people. Because I'm in a situation where I am constantly having to work that muscle, I mean, I'm not curling 20 pounds. I'm curling 200, dude, and I'm still maxing out early. So when I pray, I just say, Jesus, this is how I feel about it. I'm not happy. But I cast these cares on you. And I'm not even sure if I'm doing that. But teach me to cast my cares upon you. And that's the only way you can make it through the day. I don't know how you can make it otherwise. I don't know how you could just... I don't know how. I don't know. These other special needs parents, some that deal with situations worse than me, I don't know how they make it, man, if they don't have God in their lives. Because I know how deeply I feel. And I have a God that I can cast my cares upon. I can't imagine dealing with this and not having it. So it's okay to be mad when you're dealing with dealing with a special needs, medically fragile type kid. It's okay to be mad, I think lying to God is stupid. So if you want to walk around and pretend like you're happy or not, pretend like you're not upset about what's going on. I mean, don't be a liar, If you believe in Jesus, you believe that he knows what you're thinking anyway, so why are you faking it? Just tell the truth. Just have a very honest conversation. Just be like, I'm pissed off about this. You didn't have to let this happen, but you did. Nothing gets jacked up. So, what gives? Say what you gotta say, and then just be, just say, look, I read in the Bible where it says, cast your cares upon him. I want to. I don't know how. So, Lord Jesus, I cast these cares upon you. God, you see what's going on with my son. You know all the stress and strife that goes with that. I cast it on you, Jesus. Teach me to do that, because it doesn't always feel like I'm doing it right. So please teach me how to do that, how to put that burden on you and then not take it back when I'm done talking to you. And even just there, I was actually just talking, but it turned into praying a little bit. Even there, I just feel better. And it's not a one-time thing. It's a many, many times a day thing. 50, 60, 70, 100, a lot. It's not something that ever really stops. But that's the only way you can do it, man. Because the truth is, you're probably not going to know why you're dealing with this in this life. It just is what it is. The other thing I would say is, I am a self-employed guy taking care of a special needs kid. It would be absolutely impossible without my wife. I don't know how single parents do it with a special need kid. I honestly, I don't understand how they do it. I don't know how my wife would be able to do it without me. I'm sure she'd figure it out, but I don't know how, and I don't know how I'd do it without her. So, the key is make sure that when you're married and you're dealing with this, that you work together. Many times, my wife and I have had not fights, but very serious discussions about the course of action to take in a hospital. When the doctor has presented us with options, and we've said, well, we need to talk about it, and we've had fierce conversations. And but once we come to a solution, regardless of whose side won, we both fight for that. So we work together, and we have each other's back 100%. That's the only way you can do it. So I feel like I probably left stuff out. So there'll probably be a part 2 to this. But I just really wanted to get that out there as a father of a special needs kid that's running a solo lawn business. That's the deal. So, this is Randy with Dulin Cut Trim. I hope this video was helpful to you. Have a good one.